there, we're on the air, it's hockey night tonight. Tension grows, the whistle blows, and the puck goes down the ice. The goalie jumps and the players bump and the fans all go insane. Someone roars, Bobby scores at the good old hockey game. Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can name. And the best game you can name is the good old hockey game. Second period.
My delegation would like to submit to the Assembly a very short resolution.
I believe that we can marshal the human, material, and financial resources of this country to eradicate poverty, inequality, and insecurity.
Even referred to me on Twitter one time as Dimples McCheery.
That there was a pre-imperial Britain, and that therefore there would be a post-imperial Britain.
Where if you want a pizza at 3 in the morning, it will be dispatched to you by an Albanian on a small motorbike.
After all, didn't Cromwell say to the artist who drew his picture, who painted him, put in all the warts as well?
For the first time in our history, parents believe that the future of their children will be less promising than their own.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Red Ensign Special. Politics is about friends and enemies. Why Marty up north is wrong about Olivia Chow. Alright, well, I am back from my vacation, and while I was on my vacation, the very colorful mayor of Toronto, I suppose is the best way to put it, drew the attention of conservative Twitter by participating in a dance-off. I'm not sure if this dance-off was associated with FIFA or whether it was associated with the 1st of July or the 4th of July or whether this is like late Pride news. I don't really know. Frankly, I don't really care. You can watch it. It's very cringy. It got a lot of Twitter attention, as you might expect. Whatever. She is a very cringy figure and a very colorful figure. So, it is what it is, I guess. Marty up north, who's a big part of the sort of... he's a hard figure to place, but he's definitely on the right of online politics in Canada. Decided to respond to this, and I think his response, out of the hundreds of responses from kind of the Canadian online right that exist to the dance-off, is instructive. So Marty up north chooses to point out that Olivia Chow is the product of a pretty marginal academic career. She went to Jarvis Collegiate and studied fine arts at OCAD, then studied philosophy and religion at Victoria College at U of T, and then graduated with a BA from the University of Guelph in fine art. How it is she attended all three of these institutions and finally graduated with a BA from the University of Guelph, I'll leave for others to look into. I really don't care all that much. But this is certainly not an upstanding academic career. She's been a politician her whole life, a school board trustee, a councillor, an MP, and now the mayor. This is an accurate summation of her political career. This is really where it gets interesting. She has, quote, zero skills whatsoever, barely speaks English, has never thought deeply about issues, never built anything, but people keep electing her to office. The implication being that the dignity of the office of the Mayor of Toronto indicates that it should be occupied by one of Plato's philosopher kings, somebody with either a great academic background or a great business background, somebody who is accomplished and impressive, and that such a person should lead Toronto to great glory. But I would submit to you that Olivia Chow better understands the politics of Toronto than Marty up north does, and the fact that she is not a philosopher king is an essential part of that political formula. For example, the fact that she, quote, barely speaks English. She speaks heavily accented English, and the fact that she speaks heavily accented English is a huge political advantage to her in the political formula that she has used to find her way into office at varying levels over the past 30-odd years. In order to kind of step into our analysis of this political career, we are going to first come to the question of what is politics so that we can kind of understand it, and then how has Olivia Chow practiced it throughout her career. So Carl Schmitt wrote a very interesting book called The Concept of the Political, in which he made the argument that it is in the nature of human beings to draw distinctions, and then the practice of politics is to take sides across those distinctions. To quote him directly, the specific political distinction to which political action and motives can be reduced is that between friend and enemy. In other words, any anthropological grouping of human beings is going to draw distinctions and then act politically. So it's going to have an aristocratic class which will act politically on behalf of its side and take its side as friend and the other side of that distinction as enemy, and that's how the fundamental nature of human politics. And the insight that has driven almost all of Olivia Chow's political career is that the Greater Toronto Area is a single great machine, which runs from Hamilton in the far west to past Carlington in the far east to Lake Simcoe in the kind of northeast out to where it disappears into farm country in Caledon and Halton Hills in the kind of northwest. Almost every person living inside those borders has regular interaction with the city of Toronto, either directly or indirectly via commerce. Right? It is one single machine, but it is divided into, depending on how you kind of frame it, dozens or hundreds of different political jurisdictions, from Burlington to Oakville to Mississauga to Pickering to Ajax. All of these are political jurisdictions that are in economic reality integrated with the city of Toronto, but in political reality have no association with it whatsoever, except that they're under a common provincial and federal government. Equally, Olivia Chow spent all of her political career running in versions of what would be her federal political riding, Trinity Spadina. So these are riding structures depending on the level of politics, and there was a reorganization when Megacity happened and blah, 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 but fundamentally always on the west side of downtown along the lakefront. And she recognized that because this single machine exists, which spans a huge geographic area and encompasses a huge number of people, that she could spend her time in politics doing kind of two things. First of all, the west side of downtown Toronto is home to one of the largest Chinatowns anywhere in the world, and has been for her entire political career. And simply by being obviously East Asian, speaking with a thick East Asian accent in politics, she would have an immense advantage with people living in this jurisdiction. But second, she realized that there are a whole number of political distinctions in interest which exist between people who live on the west side of downtown and people who live elsewhere in the elsewhere in the city of Toronto, elsewhere in the GTA, that she could draw those distinctions as salient political issues and then take the side of the people who get to decide whether she's in office or not. In other words, side with the people of downtown West against all of the other people of the GTA. And this would be a politically profitable maneuver for her, because the people who live in downtown West are the people who get to actually vote for or against her, and so siding with them against their political enemies is good. Was good for her political career. And so we have the issues which she has centered for her entire political career. The first and probably most emblematic example is the issue of bike lanes. So Olivia Chow, for her entire political career, has been a massive bike lane advocate. This will sound politically disadvantageous to most of my audience because bike lanes are probably not very popular with this audience. However, bike lanes actually represent a land use conflict between the residents of downtown Toronto, particularly certain parts, like Chinatown is a big subject for this, and the residents of everywhere else attached to the GTA. So if we remember this big map, this is a huge geographic area, all of whom occasionally have need to use the city of Toronto, particularly downtown, all of whom have a political interest in transportation in and out of the downtown core being as easy as possible, and most of whom are primarily users of cars for transportation. Olivia Chow, however, has chosen to represent a tiny fraction of those people living specifically in the west of downtown, for whom those cars passing through their neighborhood are, at best, kind of inconvenient, and at worst, just a nightmare that makes their life more difficult, right? If you think about when downtown West is not usually the final destination of cars coming from outside the city, most people who come from outside the city actually go into the core for things like events at Maple Leaf Gardens or at the Dome or something like that. They don't often go into Chinatown or Kensington Market or any of those areas. And so these are simply people passing through the area. And for the people who live in this part of downtown, every person who passes through the area, doesn't buy anything, is just a tax on their infrastructure and, a bunch of noise, a bunch of trouble, and doesn't do anything for them. And so when you advocate for bike lanes as a politician, Olivia Chow famously rode her bike to City Hall for years on end, dressed it up with flowers to make it very visible, publicly participated in cyclist protests. What you're doing when you advocate for bike lanes is you're taking away resources from the people who want to pass through the jurisdiction, and you're giving them to people who actually live in the jurisdiction. And you're creating a kind of walking culture that benefits all of the little storefront businesses that dominate the area, right? So you are taking sides with the people who actually get to vote on whether or not you're in office against their political adversaries who live outside that region. Similar issue, Olivia Chow has spent the last 15 plus years, something like that, being one of the loudest and most annoying voices in opposition to the expansion in use of Toronto Island Airport. Toronto Island Airport is as the name implies, is an airport just outside of Toronto Harbor. There are maybe even within 1 mile, a huge number of people who live very close to that airport. And for years, whether it's Porter or whether it's the GTAA or whether it's the large number of or whether it's Air Canada, people have proposed plans to expand Toronto Island Airport to accommodate more landing slots and jet aircraft in order to become a more direct competitor with Pearson for particularly international flights. This is a straightforward conflict, again, between her constituents and everyone else in the GTA. For everyone else in the GTA, an expansion of the Toronto Island Airport means two things. Either directly that they get to use that airport in order to go about their business in the world. If jets or more landing slots are added to the airport, that means better access, particularly to kind of flights back and forth to Montreal, New York, Chicago, those kinds of areas. The downtown airport is very convenient for some people because it's close to Union Station, and because it's a smaller airport, you can kind of get in and out pretty fast. It's a huge asset to those people. Equally, if you're a business owner in the GTA, having more international airport access it's good for business. However, if you happen to be one of the people who lives in the condos along the lakeshore, more landing slots later at night, jet engines which are louder, all represent a direct reduction in your quality of life, which is not compensated for by the limited value you're ever going to realize from the airport. Classic not in my backyard situation. Olivia Chow saw the opportunity to side with the people who actually get to vote on whether or not she is a political representative against everyone else in the entire GTA. And she has done so extremely loudly for a very, very long time. Now, these kinds of local friend-enemy distinctions were extremely effective for her when she was either a school board trustee or a city councillor in the city of Toronto, where these kinds of local issues are really the focus of those political bodies. But when she decided to go into federal politics, she discovered pretty quickly that she needed to find alternate wedges to drive her political coalition. And so she found them. After squeaking in as an MP, she advocated for a long period of time and very visibly for a House of Commons motion, which eventually passed, recognizing Japanese comfort women. All right, what is going on here? So Olivia Chow recognized that in federal politics, unlike in local politics, similar to local politics, but not quite the same, what she needed to do was find a way to, again, keep together this coalition of those who identify ethnically with her and the kind of white progressives who in local politics loved that she was an advocate on behalf of their local interests. In federal politics, now she figured out that she could morally preen on behalf of their values, which are aligned with the kind of the values of the global American empire, is probably the best way to put it. These two things kind of go very well together because the values of the global American empire are very very friendly to kind of non-white ethnic interests in traditionally white countries. And so it was very easy for her to kind of marry the two together. And she found a whole series of these completely irrelevant, I shouldn't say completely irrelevant, these opportunities to represent the desired moral preening of half of her constituency in federal politics. And this is perhaps the best single example. Japanese comfort women refer to a group of women that the mid-century Japanese regime I guess they were sex workers. They were semi-coerced, and I don't know enough about it to know how aggressively they were coerced into filling this role for Japanese troops stationed kind of all over the South Pacific during that conflict. Again, this is an issue that has absolutely nothing to do with Canada, but it is a group of people who are aggrieved according to the values of the American Empire, and getting the Canadian government to request that the Japanese government make a formal apology to these people who by then are, senior citizens and kind of politically irrelevant in Japan. This is great kind of progressive moral preening as politics, and it did a great job of holding her coalition together in federal politics, very similar to the way the Palestine issue operates today. Though it has the advantage of having of not having the Israelis as the other side of the issue. Then Olivia Chow benefited from a set of circumstances coming together for her. So Olivia Chow was the second wife of the late Jack Layton, who had a very politically important career as the leader of the NDP and the representative of Canadian socialism, right? Canadian, maybe not Canadian hardcore progressivism. And just to be clear, the marriage between Olivia Chow and Jack Layton was always a political one. They had no children together. Jack Layton was known to extensively frequent the sex workers of Toronto, famously ran into a scandal by being caught in an illegal massage parlor in the city. So this is, for what Jack Layton got out of the marriage to Olivia Chow was a non-white spouse to kind of help keep the hyper-progressive left coalition together at a time where that was very important. And what Olivia Chow got out of the marriage was a much more successful political figure with which to associate herself with. And she got an unexpected boon out of that relationship because Jack Layton died young, and his funeral was treated as a sacred event among Canadian progressives. And because she was his then current wife, she got to be a central figure in that sacred event in Canadian progressivism. This permanently cemented her as a kind of figure of the pseudo-religious progressive ideology that holds white progressivism in downtown Toronto together. Then when John Tory, the pretty successful mayor of Toronto, pretty successful electorally and pretty successful at actually making the city work, was forced out because of some scandal, she recognized an opportunity to leverage the political coalition she had built over all of these years into political power. And so if you look at the results of the election that occurred by which she became mayor of Toronto, you can see this coalition delivering for her in spades. Again, mayoral elections like this in Toronto tend to be very low turnout, so motivated voters are what win the day. And Olivia Chow was very effective at motivating participants in the kind of hyper-progressive religious cult, plus voters who ethnically identify with her in order to march into power, back into the kind of old position that she occupied. And it's an interesting reality of her political strategy that now that she actually occupies the office of mayor of Toronto, a lot of the political games she played for her entire career, she has to kind of put down, and she doesn't really seem to know what to do. It looks a lot like her early years as an NDP MP, where she's trying to figure out what does it mean to represent the whole of the city of Toronto instead of to represent one particular piece of it. And she is in the process of trying to lean harder into the kind of socialist end of progressivism as a response to this new set of political circumstances that she found herself in based on circumstances she could not have predicted. Okay, what does this amount to? Olivia Chow is an absolute master of drawing political distinctions along lines that are beneficial to her, right? She drew a dialectic over from drawing dialectics over bike lanes that are politically beneficial to her locally, to drawing political distinctions over Japanese comfort women that are politically advantageous to her locally. She's great at alienating people who don't get a say as to whether she gets political power in favor of people who do get a say of whether or not she gets political power. In other words, she has a far more realistic understanding of politics in the Toronto area than Marty up north, who wishes that she was the great philosopher king of Ontario with excellent academic credentials behind her and a long history of creating value for the city. There are many people in Toronto with excellent academic qualifications, many people who have built incredible businesses, who are very accomplished in all kinds of ways. There is not a single person active in Toronto municipal politics today who is as politically skilled and has been as politically successful and as successful in creating a political coalition as Olivia Chow. And it's likely that she will prove this by winning another mayoral election on basically the same political formula she has been using her entire career. You should be complaining not about Olivia Chow, but about the absolutely absurd political system that delivers a person like Olivia Chow into power. All right. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you learned something.
Canada originally was put together by two groups of people who didn't have much in common but didn't want to be American.
The line just popped into my head. A bunch of the boys was a-whooping it up. And there I got my start.
We have had a flag. Flags can be changed. But flags cannot be imposed, the sacred symbols of a people's hopes and aspirations, by the simple, capricious, personal choice of a Prime Minister of Canada.
I have watched this country for half of my life from abroad, and we have turned complacency into just that, a national sport.
I am resolutely opposed to all innovation, all change, but I am determined to understand what's happening. I don't choose just to sit and let the juggernaut roll over me.